And oops. All right. Okay. Good morning. Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is staying safe at home. Okay. So this time around, we are not essential service, and this will be like the first time. Somewhere many months ago. Probably about 12, 13 months ago. All right. So today, what I'm going to share is the art of negotiation. And I think this is one of the single most important thing when it comes to closing. All right. So, and in this industry, there's so many things we need to look into. Okay. And many a times, I see a lot of people, and I hear a lot of people when they always ask me, hey, Aldrin, what would be the how do you do closing? What would be the best way? What should be the words that I need to say? What is the key point? All right. So there's always this one sentence, one word, and and those days when I do sales, I remember, and I have quite a number of agents under me. So whenever they happen to see me in the gallery to do sales, now one of my very habit, okay, I would say the usual sentence I would say to my client would be just buy. All right, and most of the time they buy. Okay, now why is that so? All right, and everyone is able to achieve that. So before I go on further, let's do a bit of a recap. All right, I shared this about 2 or 3 days ago. So what is a buyer's market? Before we talk about the art of negotiation, what is a buyer's market? I'm sure a lot of people will know that favors the buyer. All right, full stop, very easy, straightforward, don't have to think much. Okay. In real estate negotiation, if you simplify and if you are very targeted, you are very specific, you will see great negotiation happen, and you can close the deal just like that. All right. So first thing first, before anything happens, this is a market that favors the buyer by far and large. All right. So in a buyer's market, I share this again, a bit of a recap. Let's look at managing expectation. All right. So in a buyer's market, you know that the price is coming down. All right. Okay. So that's good, right? Because every time every negotiator on the ground, where they couldn't close a deal, they say, I got a bad listing. So I ask them, why is it a bad listing? Because the seller is selling unreasonable, and the seller is selling above the market rate. Okay. So then whenever we get even a project, sometimes when you get a project where the per square foot price is high, then my agent say, wow, Aldrin, so difficult to sell. So when I get the one that is very reasonably priced, then I'll be asking them, hey, where is my sales? Where is your sales? Am I right? So now, in short, buyer's market price are coming down. What is the expectation of the buyer? All right. So most of the time, the seller will still want to sell at P1. All right. But the buyer is actually expecting a price of the future price, which is a P2, which is lower. All right. So whatever it is, today, everyone just want a lower price. Okay. So so buyer constantly will chase for future lower price, and they want it today. They want it now. All right. Okay, so seller will have to match the buyer's future price that they want, which is a lower price today. Okay, and you has to convince the seller to match the price that the buyer expect, which is lower. So everything happens today. All right, now. Okay, in negotiation, I say anything to do with property is all about timing. So it's about now. So if you talk about seller's market, then it will be a flip side. Am I right? So it is very important to bring the price down. But then pricing is not everything. Okay, pricing is not everything, because I will share with you why is that so. And this is what I see one of the major obstacles as to why a lot of negotiators, they couldn't close the gap, even though it could be just 5,000, 10,000. The worst still, if let's say a property is worth 2 over million, and the gap is it's only 10, 20 or 30,000. Am I right? So then you'll be like so frustrating. All right. So so the important thing is this: if you, all right, okay, if you can bring the future price of what the buyer is expecting, which is lower than what the seller is willing to sell today, all right, you will be the one closing the deal. All right. So straightforward, very simple. Okay. So another word is you got to bring the future back to your customer, your buyer today. Okay, so not going back to the future, you have to, all right, and you got to bring it back so that the buyer will put the money down. All right, so so another thing is this. So if you happen to face with a very tough leads that come in, maybe they are not so hot, as what I shared the other time. Am I right? So this is the best time to make your cold leads into the hot leads. Okay. So so I call it the hourglass effect. This is a recap for those that have attended 2 days ago. You have seen this. So to me, it's very simple. Buyer's market price naturally will come down. Am I right? So the better the price is, or the lower the price is, or the better the terms are going to be, the terms of sale or term of purchase, your police will naturally, all right, naturally become a hot lead. Then the major question is, are you going to be the one that is going to capture the transaction? All right. Now, and I said 2 to 3 days ago, okay, whenever we reach out and we do marketing, okay, so you can advertise 10 property and into one property portal and you get no calls, and you advertise into another property portal, you get one call and you close the deal. Then is it because the property portal is good? A yes and a no. All right, because why you can close the deal so fast by just one call and one viewing and close the deal is because someone else, your competitor, has done the job. All right, in negotiation, in doing whatever it is, it's just that probably the property is not suitable to the buyer, and the buyer happened to see your advertisement, and then immediately you close the deal. All right, but you have to remember, all right, whenever you do the negotiation, you have to make sure you're the one that captures the transaction. And as what Terence shared yesterday, negotiation doesn't start when you get an offer. Negotiation starts when your client engage you for your services. Either could be a seller, could be a vendor, or could be a buyer, or could be a tenant. All right. Okay. So then we all know that the deal is done. When there's a willing buyer and there's a willing seller. Am I right? So what is a willing buyer and what is a willing seller? We all know that, you know that, okay, but the key question is when, all right? So it's all about timing, it's about when. Okay, we all know that we have to get them to be willingly able to sell and able to buy. All right, for those who, okay, you may want to turn off your mic, or maybe the co-host, can you help to look into it and mute those who accidentally unmute their mic. All right, so the key question is this, it's not about what is a willing buyer, what is a willing seller, it's when. All right, and you got to make it happen. You want to close the deal, negotiation is just part of the process. That closing part of it is where you capture the transaction. And if you can bring a willing buyer and a willing seller to be able to, or rather to be willing at the same time, this is where your closing will happen. Am I right? So, so the negotiation is the part that comes before you do the closing. Always remember that. Now, so, okay, what's the difference between a negotiation and a bargaining? Now, from my perspective, all right, from my perspective, I've been doing this for 20 over years. I still do quite a lot of training, and I do a lot of coaching. And so this is what I observe, all right? Most of the agents, most of the negotiators on the ground are not even doing negotiation, and they thought that they are. In fact, they are doing bargaining. All right, so there's a two different thing. All right, what is the differentiation between a negotiation and a bargaining? You just think about it, a very simple terminology. All right, so bargaining is an agreement between two or more parties. All right, so that as to each party will do for the other, or attain bought or offer for sale more cheaply than what is usual or expected. All right, so the key thing is more cheaply than what is usual or expected. Whereas negotiation, on the other hand, is a discussion that involves consideration and deliberation on many matters. All right, so if you look at this, all right, if you look at this so-called terminology that you see, all right, there's actually a distinction between bargaining and negotiation. And so now this is what it is. Most of the time when you negotiate, all right, those are agents on the ground. Okay, seller want to sell 1 million and buyer offer 900, and then the usual is let's go 950, let's go in between. Am I right? So again, that is a due process. Again, that is nothing wrong. But what will be the basis of whether the buyer is willing to up by 50,000 and the seller is willing to go down by 50,000? There must be a reason. Am I right? So if you do not go into the reasoning with your client, especially when talking about negotiation in the buyer's market, and this will favor the buyer, means you have to put more attention in your negotiation with the seller. How are you going to convince them so that they will be willing to increase 50,000 by their offer for the buyer and reduce 50,000 by the seller? All right. So and it's not going to be easy, or is it not? All right. If you ask me, if you were to structure your negotiation okay, you will find it as simple as ABC. All right, okay. So now, so negotiation, most of the time, negotiation will be like a roller coaster. Am I right? Okay. But then if you think about it, all right, what will be the thought process of your client when they deal with you? All right. So throughout my whole years of doing personal sales, I use this very, very effectively for myself. So this will be a sharing session that I'm sharing with you guys on how I do my negotiation, and I put it in a very structural way. Yeah, I will do compartmentalization. All right. So now, if you were to have a framework, all right, if you will have to a framework where okay, so all right, okay, so okay, so negotiation, okay, roller coaster. And if you want to structure it, this is what I was using it, highly effective, and this is what I train my agents to do it, and I can see the high effectiveness of that. So the framework of negotiation, there are actually three parts. When your client deal with you, and when they make a certain decision, all right. So what goes in their mind or the consideration are number one, legal decision. Now, number two, commercial decision. And number three, emotional decision. Now, if you want to have a highly successful, effective negotiation, okay, these are the three areas that you will have to encompass and you have to take into consideration before your seller or your buyer, is going to be a willing buyer and a willing seller. All right. And most of the time, what I see on the ground is just bargaining and not doing negotiation, and it's all a lot of emotion. Okay, so now if you ask me, these three parts of it, emotional, commercial decision, legal decision, are very important. So if let's say if I'm the owner, all right, and if let's say I ask you to buy to sell a property, and you've been working on it, all right, probably for 1 or 2 months, okay, and then there's a couple of offer that comes in, and there's one offer that comes in quite pretty close to what I am willing to let go. Am I right? So emotionally, would I be convinced to let go slightly lower, or would it make commercial sense, and would it make legal sense for me? All right, depending on what type of property. But in short, these are the three parts that is highly important that you got to look into it. All right, okay. So let's go to the next slide. Of course, if you are able to handle these three, then negotiation come as easy as ABC lah. All right. So emotional decision. Okay. So what is this all about? This part of the negotiation. Now, this is what I see again. A lot of things that happen on the ground with respect of how our clients deal with you. All right. What is their customer experience? And generally, this is what I see here. All right. Most of our clients' experience with us is very transactional. Why is that so? Is because for very simple reason. All right. By far and large, a lot of negotiators on the ground. Everyone just want to close a deal. What am I right? You just want to get the price right, seller, buyer. Match the price, and you get it right, and you are able to close the deal, right? So in the eyes of the perspective of the seller or even the buyer, it's very transactional. Okay. So then how would that help you in terms of negotiation to handle the emotional part of it? If there's something that is transactional, meaning to say that it's nothing emotional. So if there's nothing emotional, means you cannot capitalize on the emotion part of it to convince your seller, all right, to lower the price or to have a better terms. So you see the relationship or not between transactional and relational. So if you ask me, the first part is if you want to handle the emotion part of the seller or your client, your dealing, all right, with your client got to be relational. It cannot be transactional. Let me just give you a very simple example of transactional. Many months ago, all right, I have an agent who come and see me and say, "Hey, Aldrin, how come when I go and place a banner in a factory, all right, and the guard disallowed me to put a banner, and then immediately I call the owner, and I know the owner, and I call the owner, and the owner say it's okay. I already have another 3 agents that is already put up the banner, and he further relayed to me that he knows this owner. All right. So the first thing that I asked him is this: when was the last time you called the owner? 3 years ago. Then I say, why? Well, Aldrin, the unit, all this wall is not empty, ma. Until now, what? So I call her. So you see, transactional and relational. All right. So if you do not have a relational kind of relationship with your client, the emotion part of it, you are not able to capitalize. And that's one thing you always have to remember. Emotion plays a highly important part in negotiation. All right. Okay. And okay, so how do we gain, how do we handle this emotional part of it? Through one very simple thing called trust and confidence. All right. Trust and confidence is highly, highly important. And all right. Okay, better now. So trust and confidence. Okay, and so now for trust and confidence, this is the part that you need to be able to get your client to have the trust and confidence in you. And how do you even do that? All right. Very, very simple. How can you increase the level of trust with respect to your client? Okay. Now, to me, this is what I call the reverse engineering. And it's so easy to do it. And it's so simple to do it. And everyone can do it. And I see a lot of people are not doing it. All right. I'm sure you are already doing it on the ground before you knowing it, or for those who are not doing it, there's a couple of tips that you are able to do. All right. So to me, it's very simple. Okay. You think about it. You think about it. If someone were to ring the doorbell, all right, a stranger, all right, and happen to ring the doorbell and wanted to sell you something, all right. So what would be your reaction? Number one, you say, no, I'm not interested. Please get lost. Or number two, you spend a little bit of time listening to what the person is trying to sell. Or number three, you spend a little bit of time trying to listen to what the person trying to sell, and then you even open the door and get the person to come in and have a seat. So now what? How, your decision making in terms of rejecting or pause for a while to listen or even invite the person to come in will be depending on whether you trust a person or not. Am I right? You will trust a person whether is it a scam, is it you're going to gonna rob, or you're probably going to be I don't know, even murdered as well. All right. Okay. So what it goes in your mind is actually the confidence. All right. So confidence comes before trust. Okay. If you trust a person, means you have the confidence that the person would be able to deliver. Am I right? So now, then how do you gain your confidence? Building confidence is just as easy as what you're going to see on the slide here. Again, all right, you have already done it, and if you are not doing it, this is a good time that you start doing it. All right. Now, first thing first is this. All right. How do you build the bridge of confidence to your customer so that your customer will have a higher level of trust? One would be dress appropriately. All right. It's as simple as really, yeah, okay. I mean, it could be in a literal sense and not in a literal sense as well. Of course, the thing is, if you don't respect yourself, all right, the fact that this is a profession, how are you going to respect your client? All right, it also boils down to the way you present yourself. Okay, so so dress appropriately, be very presentable. That is the first step to gain your client's confidence. You cannot be seeing your client in I don't know, in shorts. You cannot be seeing your clients in the sandal. All right, especially for men. Women will tend to be able to get away, for men not. All right, but of course these days things are a lot more casual, so that's a pretty good thing. But then again, all right, you have to respect your client in terms of the way you dress. Okay, so put customer first. Yeah. Now this is also a very simple tip where, now when you know that, I know that, okay, but then does your client feel that you are putting their what do you call their sorry, it's a bit interactive. So okay, so does your client able to feel that they are putting their customer first? And I think that is highly important. Putting your customer first, meaning to say, to the very least, that your customer doesn't feel that you are there just to close the deal to earn the commission. You are there to help them to solve the problem. All right. Okay. Number 3, empathize the situation. All right. Empathize your client. That is very important. Why would the seller want to sell? Why would the buyer need to buy? Okay. So now, be an expert in your field. All right. So I'm not going to go too in depth into all this. Okay. But these are just simple tips for you to build the confidence. Be an expert in your field. If you do not know what you are saying, all right, and if you are not knowledgeable enough, all right, in the area that you are doing the negotiation, your client will not have confidence with you. You go into the shop, you try to buy a television, let's say in an electrical shop, and the salesman is not even able to answer, all right, the question that you ask, right? Okay. Would you want to talk to the salesperson, or you choose to talk to another person? So you think about it, all right? So now, the other one will be integrity, okay? All right, integrity, you know, I know that, you know that. So how do we come, how can you have integrity? Now, to me, integrity, it means there must be transparency, there must be accountability. All right, are you accountable for as the appointed estate agent, as a negotiator that's handling the property for your client? All right, are you transparent enough? If you are, and if you have transparency, your accountability, that is where the integrity is there. That is where your client will be able to feel it, all right? And lastly, follow up, okay? This is one very simple example. Follow up, you know, I know, and this is how it is, because I do meet with some negotiators on the ground at times, and they say that, hey, Aldrin, I get so stressed, I got all this listing, but then I cannot get a tenant, I cannot get a buyer, am I right? And I'm so afraid that the owner call me and I don't know what to say. Actually, it's so simple. Whenever the owner call you, take that as a time to negotiate with the owner. All right. And the thing is this: most of the time when our client appoint us, the first thing that they want is not the buyer or the seller, not the buyer or the tenant. The first thing that they want is they want to be able to see, are you putting effort to help them to sell the property or to rent out the property? Are you or not? They must be able to see. If you can show your client, the seller and the buyer, that you have put in the effort to do whatever it is in terms of the marketing, in terms of going for viewings and things like that, when there is an offer that comes in, all right, it's a lot easier to negotiate. Okay, so that is what it is. Now, the thing is, you want your customer, your client, in especially times like that, your seller, because the buyers are plenty around, you want your buyer to, your seller to be able to give a better terms of even a lower price. You must be able to make sure that the seller is able to listen to you. All right. Okay. So that is highly important. So like what I said, okay. Now, if your client, all right, do not have the confidence in you, and thus do not be able to trust you, how are you able to get your client to agree? Let's say, for you to convince the seller to be able to lower the price. All right. Okay. So that is what it is. Okay. All right. So now, so the next thing is this commercial decision. So this will be the part where, what is this commercial decision all about? So you think about it. So this is a buyer's market now. All right. The million dollar question is this: when to sell? All right. So I'm putting more effort now on talking about negotiation with the seller rather than a buyer. It's the thing is, when you have a client that come to you, the seller that come to you and ask for your opinion, when would be a good time to sell? What would your answer be? Now, remember, all investment is all about return, is all about profitability, is all about whether you break even or you make a loss. Am I right? Okay, and you know that there's always a holding cost. The longer you hold means the more interest that you pay. And of course, if it's rented out, then there is a rental return. If it's not, then it's actually the higher the cost is going to be, right? Okay. So then the thing is when to sell. Okay. So this is where a lot of agents, when they do negotiation, or in fact, you ask me, will be bargaining. Either a seller selling 1 million, buyer offer 900, go in between and whatnot. Okay, how are you able to make commercial sense for your seller to be able to let go at a certain price? All right. So let's look at what goes into the seller's mind during the buyer's market. Everyone buy a property, want to make money, right? Okay. So if everyone to buy property and make money, and times like that, okay, the volume of transaction has dropped a little last year, and we are in the pandemic, so the consumer sentiment index, people's confidence are not that great. Am I right? So now, so this is what goes into the seller's mind. Now, it's actually as simple as what you see over here. Okay. So now, what does this denote in terms of the green and the red area and the green area? So on one hand is profitability, on the other hand is actually time. Am I right? So when in a buyer's market now, especially when we are in the pandemic and more so we are in the third MCO, okay, the seller's confidence, whether the price of the market will pick up or whether the market will stabilize will be very low, all right? So you want to seize the opportunity and talk to your seller. And we are actually helping them. Don't get me wrong, all right? This is not just about pricing the seller price now. Okay, the lower it is, the better it is. Now, at times, a lot of seller, they will need to dispose of is because for a simple reason, okay? If they do not dispose of within a certain period of time, and you are in a buyer's market where the price are still sliding down, all right, they will hit to a point where they start making a loss, as what you see over here. All right, so this is actually in a way the pricing, as you can see over here. So as the prices go down, the likelihood of the seller that make a loss is there. So basically, how are you able to advise your client? Okay, or maybe if your client asks you to sell at 1 million and you have an offer at 900,000. So do you know, and would you know whether the 900,000 your seller will be able to make a profit or no? And to be very honest with you, a lot of sellers, they do not know exactly when is their break-even point one. Seriously, all right? This is my experience with a lot of my clients. And even myself as well, all right? I'm sure all of you would have already invested in a property. Now, if I were to ask you a question today, would you be able to find out exactly what is your holding cost up to today within the next 5 minutes? I don't think any one of us will have the answer. Neither do I. All right, okay, because yeah, we know how much we bought it, we know about this, we know how much we pay, how much renovation they have done, and things like that. It's all in the ballpark figure, am I right? But when you come to real commercial decision, whether would you be able to sell at a certain price so that you can break even is a big question mark. And so what do you do when you have a big question mark? Then you will inflate your holding cost. So that is the reason why a lot of seller, okay, when they ask you to sell a certain property, and then they wanted to let go at the minimum price. That is a minimum price that they are very, very sure that they will not lose money. They will break even, and it's inflated. It's inflated because they do not know exactly in totality what is their holding cost. Why? Because they never keep track. All right. So likewise, if you are a negotiator now, and if your buyer were to offer you, make an offer of a certain pricing, can you be able to determine whether that offer price by your buyer will make commercial sense for your client if they want to break even? All right. The worst case, of course, the mid case, of course, is break even. Break even meaning to say you got to be very precise. Yeah. All right. So if you cannot convince your seller that, hey, look, Mr. Seller, this is a price that if you were to sell, you will break even. How can your seller agree to that price? Am I right? Because your seller will be afraid that they will be making a loss. So, so then let's look into how do you even determine a holding cost? Now, before even that, during a buyer's market, okay, the dollar you see will be from high profit going to low to break even and making a loss. Now, at this moment of time, still a lot of sellers are not willing to make a loss. All right, the market is not that bad, seriously. It's just that a lot of people are not very confident with how the market is going to be in the next 1 to 2 years. Am I right? So, and you have to remember, even at this during third MCO, there's a lot more SME are affected. There's a lot more business owner are affected. Now, the first thing first is when to a lot of business owner, when they are affected, the first thing is they need to liquidate. And if they have property is one of the best source of liquidation to get the cash out. Am I right? So if you ask me, this is always a good time to even negotiate. All right. So what is break-even point? Now, break-even point to me is very simple. Okay, selling price plus rental collected minus holding cost minus incidental cost of selling. Okay, selling price we know what, right? Okay, selling price means it's a price offered by your customer. Okay, rental collected. How often does your seller take rental collection into consideration? They don't. Okay, and whenever I talk to seller and the seller wanted to sell at a certain price, okay, I will also be telling them, look, you also have this amount of rental collected over the years. Am I right? Yes, you got to pay interest, but the interest is already being taken into consideration in the holding cost. Am I right? So this is what it is. So selling price plus rental collected minus holding cost minus incidental cost of selling equals to break-even point. You as a negotiator appointed by your seller, all right, or you are bringing a buyer to your seller and your buyer make an offer, you must be able to know where does the owner's commercial financial standing stand with respect to this particular property where your buyer wants to buy at a certain price. Am I right? So is the seller going to make a loss? Is the seller is going to make money, or the seller is going to break even? All right. If the seller is motivated enough, all right, or another word is very desperate, okay, if the offer comes in, the seller is able to break even, you will definitely close the deal. You will definitely close the deal. If the seller is even more desperate, even the offer comes in and the seller is making a loss, you will even close the deal. Am I right? So this is what it is. But if your buyer still want to make a little bit of profit, and your seller wants to make a little bit of profit, okay, and doesn't not willing to go even the break-even point, okay, then you must also be able to calculate that. So you see, there are three parts of it. As I say, the emotional decision, the commercial decision, and of course, I will share the legal decision. So in this commercial decision, this part of it is highly important. All right. So holding costs generally, this is what it is. The purchase price plus the transaction cost incurred during the purchase price, the interest paid so far by the owner. So a lot of people always ask me, hey, how do I know whether the interest rates paid by the owner so far, how much is it? The owner also don't even know. Actually, it's actually very simple one. Okay. The only time that you will not be able to know is when you ask the owner how much loan that you have took. A lot of owners will not remember. Then you just do an estimate, all right, based on the purchase price. Probably you take an 80% loan, all right, and when you know what is an 80% loan amount, take out a loan calculator that's able to do an annuity sum, and you'll be able to know for how many years the seller holds the property or has been servicing the loan. You will be able to know the interest rate. All right, maybe 10 years he has been holding, you'll be able to know. So these days, the wonders of a lot of calculators that you can Google will be able to help you to calculate what is the interest rate paid so much, and then what are the outgoing, cukai pintu, cukai tanah, things like that. Now, this is what I always do, all right? Okay, whenever an owner were to appoint me, okay, I will do a financial analysis in terms of holding costs, all right, up to date. Okay, so there's a lot of information that I would need the owner to give it to me. Not everything that the owner is able to give it to me. All right. So if the owner is not able to give me in clarity as to what exactly it is, I will always make an assumption, and this is what I do. I will always email or share with my client. All right. So so a simple financial analysis of what is the holding cost, so that I want my seller will be able to make a decision easier. All right, then we can talk about how much profit you want to make. You want to make 100,000, you want to make a 50,000, and if the owner want to make a lot, then I always tell the owner it's very simple. If you want to make this much, my opinion is I don't think the market at the moment can support that price. Maybe you want to hold on for another 1 or 2 years. There are times also I get my seller not to sell at this moment of time. Why don't sell 3 years later, 4 years later? This is where you can able to get the price. All right. Okay. So holding cost is very important if you want to do a commercial decision kind of negotiation. All right. If you do not put in this part of it, then you are just bargaining. All right. Okay. So incidental cost of disposal, very simple. Cost of disposal means agent's fee, taxation, legal fees. All right. So so it's very, very straightforward. And once you are able to do that, okay, then you will know and you are able to gauge, all right, where does the seller stand, all right? So any offer that comes in, then you'll know immediately whether how much profit the seller will be able to make. If there's reasonable profit, then you know that the seller may buy, all right? If it's break even, then it will depend on what is the motivation of the seller. If the seller are desperate enough or motivated enough, then your closing will be sell now before the price further go down. Am I right? Okay, so so the commercial part of it is more about profitability, the break-even point, you must be able to do that. Okay. So okay. Now next will be legal decision. All right. Legal decision involve many things. It's very wide. The usual one that I face, okay, that I see is this. Whenever a client asks you to sell a property, all right, and together with the tenancy, okay, ask yourself, how often do you, all right, do you ask for a copy of the tenancy agreement? All right. If you have 10 listing where the seller asks you to sell and you have to sell together with the tenancy, all right, how many copy of tenancy agreement out of these 10 properties are you able to obtain? And because if you ask me, that is highly important, because the tenant will be assigned to the new buyer. Am I right? So the usual thing on all these will be especially I've seen a lot of deals are aborted because when the buyer asks the agent, hey, still with tenant, right? Yes. When is the tenant leaving? The tenant is leaving at end of December. Okay, so it's okay lah. Now probably it's already June, July. By the time I sign the SMP and whatnot, whatever, I take over another 1 to 2 months, the tenant will leave. All right, so you go ahead and collect the deposit. Then after that, the purchaser's lawyer require a copy of the tenancy agreement. And to your horror, there is still an option for the tenant to renew by 31st of December. Then you call the owner, why is that so? Then the owner say, option. Option is because I can choose not to renew. But you know that option is the right given to the tenant to renew the options. Am I right? Okay, and it's not for the landlord. So what I'm trying to say is, when you look at this, whenever you talk about negotiation, where you want to get both party, willing buyer, willing seller, to come at one point, at the point that you want them to come across, okay, you also got to remember, it's not just about the emotional part, the commercial part of it, the legality part of it. All right, so a couple of legal consideration that normally you need to look into is able to deliver VP. All right, so that is one. Now, how about those property where there's investment restriction? You are dealing with foreigner, EPU matters. If you are doing a lot of institutional sales, all right, those are highly important. You got to be very well equipped. Okay, could be state consent. How would that affect your client's decision? Am I right? So quite pretty straightforward. The other important thing is this: contractual and SPA finalization. Your negotiation doesn't stop when you collect the booking deposit. All right. If your negotiation stop when your buyer pay you a deposit, the seller accept it, and your deposit you put it into your client's account, and you think, all right, okay, my job is done. The SMP, the lawyer will go and count him. Trust me, your abortive case will be higher. Okay. So you must also play a role to negotiate in terms of the contract as well. All right. What if you have a seller's lawyer and buyer's lawyer that are at loggerhead and both are having an ego issue, and we all know that and these are the kind of lawyers that will screw our deal so badly. Am I right? So badly until you say, what the, you know what I mean? So so then how? Whether do you play a role? Do you play a role to negotiate? You should. All right, you should, because at the end of the day, you always remember this. You are the one that bring their client, the seller buyer, together. Am I right? So the commercial decision has been made. All right. So the legal decision also has already been considered. The lawyer's job is to document that into a contract to protect both parties' interests. Am I right? And if let's say the lawyer are not able to come to finalization of the SMP, is for you to be able to know what are the clauses that is outstanding, and perhaps you may want to renegotiate with the seller and the buyer and get them to instruct their lawyer. Okay, so this is what it is. So negotiation doesn't stop over there. So if you ask me, there are three parts in terms of negotiation, and the three areas that you are looking at will be the emotional part of it, the commercial decision part of it, and the legality part of it. So always bear in mind, when you negotiate, it's not just about bargaining the price. It's not just about, hey, your buyer offer you offer a certain price, you go and tell the seller, and the seller say no, and you go and tell the buyer. And do not be a messenger, as what I believe Terence shared yesterday. Do not be a messenger. Okay, if your role is just being a messenger, I can tell you our business will soon be overtaken by application. You know what I mean? You got to make a difference. All right. So the difference is whether, okay, you see, whether can an application fully take over a transaction. All right. I'm not going to sidetrack a bit, but this is relevant. It's because you think about it. All right. An application do not have the emotion part of it. All right. May not have the commercial decision part of it. May not even have the legality part of it. All right. And apps basically just bring two person together. Price is right. Our team is either you buy or you don't. All right. But the rest of it will come after that. So your job, our business is still relevant as long as you can give the value to your client with respect of the three parts of it. The emotional part of it is you got to let your client be confident. Means you got to do quite a lot of things. You know, like for example, follow up, you got to know what you are doing. You got to keep your client updated. All right. So these are the simple three parts of it. And so, okay, now the second part of this session, I'm going to give a bit of tips on negotiation. And but before I do that, I'll just do a summarized cap. So the three parts of consideration by the seller and that dictates when they sell or at a certain price will be these three things: legal decision, commercial decision, and emotional decision. All right. Okay. So now let's go on with, I will give a simple 8. All right. 8 rules of negotiation. And this will work very well. And you can apply it. You're probably already applying it. And if you are not, learn to apply. All right. And they are not all very difficult, but this will make or break your deal. All right, so the cardinal rules of negotiation, number 1 is to take charge. Are you taking charge or not? I see a lot of negotiators on the ground are not taking charge. What do I mean by not taking charge is, for example, they want to meet up with your seller or the seller want to meet up with your buyer. All right, why? Is it because of they don't trust whether that is a seller or they feel that they can do a better job than you? Okay, if they want to meet up with your client and they think that they want to do a better job than you, trust me, you're not taking charge. You cannot make a difference. All right. You're just being a messenger and you will soon lose control. And then the next thing that will come is, oh my God, Dyer, will my client undercut me or not? Am I right? So the fact that you have been appointed, you are the middleman, you are the real estate negotiator, means you have to take charge. All right. So if you do not take charge, people will not respect what your position is. They'll probably be thinking you're just a doorman with a key to open the door. Am I right? You're just a office boy. Okay, I pass you the check. You give me sign the form. You go and see the owner. The owner go and sign, and after that, you go and generate the tenancy, or you get the lawyer to do the S&P. That's it. All right. You're not a doorman. You're not an office boy. Yeah. All right. You are a real estate agent or real estate negotiator. All right. This is a profession. You have to take charge. People have to respect that. So when you do not have the authority, you do not take charge, means you do not have the authority to even represent your seller, to even represent your buyer in terms of negotiation. How are you going to make a difference? You will lose control. Am I right? And you got to earn the rights. All right, to be in charge. If you do not earn the right to be in charge, you cannot just say, hey, look, I'm a real estate negotiator. The owner appointed me. That's it. Okay, this is by namesake. You have to earn the rights. How do you earn the rights? You got to be knowledgeable. You got to be respectful. You got to be polite. You got to be a lot of things. Am I right? Yeah. So we leave that for another day. But always remember, rule number 1 when you talk about negotiation, other than the 3 areas, is you must be able to take charge. All right. No one will negotiate with you unless they respect you, unless they respect authority. They will just bypass you. So a lot of times, also a lot of agents ask me, how to avoid a seller buyer to meet? Why every time, most of the time, my buyer want to meet out seller is, why? Is because the buyer and the seller, especially the buyer, do not see the value that you can bring on the table. All right. Okay. So that's one. Now, number 2 of negotiation, and this is also highly important, is set the rules. Okay. Set the rules. To me, is the first thing about negotiation is you have to set the parameter. What is not negotiable? Not everything under the sky is negotiable one. If you are one of those agents on the ground, when you negotiate, allow your client to negotiate everything and anything under the sun, okay, I can tell you it's going to be very tough on you. Am I right? So for example, let's say you are doing a tenancy case. If your client wants more than 1 month of rent-free period, usually it's not more than a month. Am I right? So then you probably will tell your client it's not negotiable. All right, maximum is a month. Security deposit is 2 months usually. If your client wants to talk about 1 month, because it's pandemic, it's because it's MCO, whatever, no, sorry, it's not negotiable because this is pretty much standard. Am I right? If your client wants to issue a post-dated earnest deposit check because that is going to be the first month rental, but the first month rental only come 2 months later because the next month is going to be rent-free period, not negotiable. If your client is going to give you half a month of the rental as an earnest deposit, do you accept it? General practice is you don't. All right, even if you do, then the owner may not be so happy. Not negotiable. All right, so set the rules so that your negotiation will be more focused and it's easier for you to handle. All right, so now number 3, be firm. That is the most important thing. Okay, learn how to say no. All right. So it's always our fear that we are not able to meet our client's expectation. Then you'll probably be thinking that the client will go with another agent. Am I right? So you try all your means and ways to satisfy and please your client. Again, nothing wrong, but there must be also be a limit. Am I right? So a good negotiator is the one that they are firm. They know when to say no. All right. And this works very, very well. Especially, let's say, for example, okay, what if both seller and buyer agree to the price? Okay, and just right before you collect the deposit, someone kind of break the rules and decided maybe especially let's say the seller, all right, already agreed with the price. You are on the way to collect the earnest deposit, and then after that the seller call you, hey, can you just hold on a while? Maybe my price will be slightly higher now. Why? Because my wife just got another better offer. All right, happens to you. Am I right? So what are you going to say? Correct or not? Okay. So of course, if you want to save the deal means you try to convince the buyer. Or you tell the seller, look, this is not going to happen. You have already committed. And so you think about it. All right. So number 4, strategize. When you go into a negotiation, you have to start your strategy of negotiation right away. And when does your negotiation start? From the day you are being appointed, when the day you get the listing. That is highly important. You know that, I know that, all right? So do not be like one of those agents or negotiators where they get a listing, after that they get the key and then go and take some picture, keep advertising it, all right? Until there's an offer that comes in, then only talk to the owner. You are not doing it efficiently, all right? There are agents on the ground that I know, whenever they get a listing, they will do the pre-inspection, they will take the photos and put the advertisement, and I can tell you, they don't even have much of a viewing. They already start negotiation, and the first 2-3 viewing, they will close the deal. Is because you know why? During this period of time, they will already bring the terms better and the price better so that their listing are more competitive. Always remember that, as I said 3 days ago, every 10 transactions that's being transacted, at least 6 or 7 are being transacted at the price lower than what the seller or landlord wants you to rent it out or sell it. So now, if that statistic is 6 to 7, you should be the one among all your competitors to be the one that do the negotiation earlier on. All right. So strategy also, you must have a couple of strategies, and you must be able to detect the weakness and the strength. All right. Especially if, let's say, you're selling houses, you have a couple who wants to buy, and the wife is the one that fell in love with it, and the wife ended up selling to the husband. And you know that the husband is still sitting on the fence, then you will know what to do. Am I right? Go for the kill. All right. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to say. So you got to be sharp. All right. And number 5, know your product. What do I mean by know your product? You can know your product very well, but you're not knowing your product. Okay, what does it mean? You can know your product very well, but it doesn't mean that you know your product. When you know your product, it's not about just about the size, about the land area, about what is this, what is that, all right? It's all about relative term. Where does your product stand among your competitors' product? That is what I meant, okay? So knowing your product itself is not good enough. You got to know where it stands in the market, am I right? So is it above market rate, below market rate? Is it having a good tenant or not so good tenant? Does it have a good capital appreciation relatively to, let's say, the property that is just nearby? Am I right? So these are the things that you will need to know. So when I say you know your product, means you got to know in relative term, where does a product stand in terms of salability, in terms of rentability as well. Then you are able to advise your client. Then you are able to negotiate better. All right. So are you a seller's agent or a buyer's agent? This is positioning. Obviously, you are in most instances these days, because of the current market situation, you are the buyer's market. All right. Sorry, you are the buyer's agent. Buyer's agent, what I meant is, while the market is already in favor of the buyer, so you got to put more weightage, all right, on negotiation on the buyer's behalf rather than vice versa. You know, for many, many years, you know, when I was still doing very actively in Glenmary, and Glenmary, many, many years ago, is a seller's market one. So when I advertise, when prospect call me, I'll tell them the price is not negotiable. Yes, I'll tell them this is the net price. Okay, and it works for me. It works for me because I already know where my listing stand. All right, I know my product well. I know what other sellers are selling, what other agents are selling, and it works well for me. So I can use that. All right. So, but if you look at today, you got to pay more attention, a lot more attention to your seller now. All right, to your landlord, because it's actually a buyer's market. Okay. So you got to ask your question every single transaction that you are doing, that you are negotiating. Okay. You got to assess. There's a lot of assessment. While it's a buyer's market, generally, by far and large, there's still areas in Malaysia where it's a seller's market. It is. All right. So whenever we talk about buyer's market, it's actually by far and large is very general. For example, if you happen to do warehousing, logistic placement, okay, is it really a buyer's or a tenant market? The answer is no. All right. During this time, per square foot rental also is, I can see an upward trend. So it's actually the seller's market when it comes to warehousing. So you think about it. So when you know your product well and you know it in relative term, then you will be able to know how to assess whether you are a buyer's agent or a seller's agent. Now, number 7, as what I mentioned earlier, what part of a strategy is to pre-negotiate. You have to pre-negotiate. Your script got to be good. You got to be an award-winning script writer. All right. So, so whenever you go into a shop and you see a salesman that is able to talk to you and quite to be very fluent, am I right? Quite to be very knowledgeable. A couple of things that you'll get immediately is you have the confidence. You know, the person is able to build the trust in you, in him. Okay, and you tend to listen and you tend to end up buying from them. Am I right? And let me just tell you something. When the salesperson has done that, the next thing is they will start pushing you a certain product. Am I right? They will start pushing you a certain product for you to buy. Now, likewise, when you talk about pre-negotiation, all right, you want to drive your client to a certain situation where you want them to make that decision. All right, could be in respect of the terms, could be respect on the terms of sales, terms of rental, could be respect of the pricing. Okay, so basically you must be able to do that. So pre-negotiation, highly important. Starts from the day you get the listing. Now, lastly, you must have room to maneuver when you come to negotiation. Do not give out your bullet away. All right. Room for negotiation, meaning to say you create buffer. Generally, when you talk about pricing, means of course you must have a buffer. Am I right? So that is so basic in terms of pricing or in terms of bargaining, I call it. All right. When the seller willing to let go at 950, you bump it up a little bit and you tell your buyer. All right. We all do that. Okay. But you have to remember, negotiation, like what I say, is different from bargaining. Bargaining is all about whether exchanging of goods on just a pricing. Negotiation is you have to look at a lot of variables. So I broke down the 3 variables in terms of emotion, commercial, and legal decision. So these are the 3 that you should look into it. All right, and so for room to maneuver, keep your buffer. Do not give up all your bullet. And so this is the 8 simple tips. All right, before I end the session. So just to recap the whole thing, negotiation is a very structured way that you can do it. If you look at the 3 key areas, all right, that I've shared, and so I've also given you the tips of negotiation. So now let's open up to Q&A. But before that, lastly, all right, okay, I kind of missed that out. Lastly, avoid conditional sales. Okay. What do I mean by conditional sales? Go and collect the check and try to convince the seller to sell. I mean, no right and wrong. Okay, you may find it effective or you don't. But generally, for me, I would avoid for myself as well. Those days when I do sales, I will avoid conditional sales. Why is that so? It's because I don't like to return check to buyer. All right, because this is my belief in, if I were to get the buyer and say, hey, you offer lah, you give me a check lah, then I talk to the seller hoping that I dangle the carrot in front of the seller. What if the seller say no? All right, if the carrot doesn't, the seller doesn't buy the carrot, I will tell the buyer, look, it doesn't work, you know what I mean? So the buyer may not be too happy about it. So for me, avoid conditional sales, all right? Avoid conditional sales when someone places a booking deposit and just you have to give you a term that you have to meet before they really confirm buying. Even if you were to sell industrial commercial, all right? Is it subject to loan approval? Most of the cases are no, all right? You're still able to do that. Okay, residential, I think is a bit different these days. So why would you want, if you are able to sell, collect the earnest deposit, not subject to loan approval, don't you think that would be better? So like I say, avoid the conditional sales, and sales happen now, sales doesn't happen later. So you just got to make it happen. So, okay, thank you very much, everyone. I will open up for Q&A session. Sorry, there was a bit of interruption just now. So, okay. Okay, let's look into it. There's a couple of questions. Okay, let's look into it. How do you know when to walk away from a negotiation? Wow. How do you know when to walk away from a negotiation? It will depends on the situation. All right. When to walk away from a negotiation is when people do not stick to what they say. All right. I will walk away. Okay. Doing the walk away actually is very powerful. When I negotiate with let's say, you know, when I negotiate with certain things, let's say, especially when I'm buying, consuming a certain things, my style is always to do a walk away, because to me it's very simple. When do you know to walk away is when you meet unreasonable client, do a walk away. It could be many situation. All right. Irene was saying regarding the commercial decision, how can I convince a seller who already set the selling price just enough to settle his bank loan and outstanding loan? Okay, very simple. It depends on whether how, you know, what is the holding power of your client. Of course, today, if your client were to give you a price that is a break-even point and it cannot go down any lower, always bear in mind, if let's say if the market cannot absorb the price that he wants to sell for another 1 year, he will end up making more losses. All right, then he has to increase what is his minimum price. You cannot increase your minimum price where generally the price are going down. So you must be able to advise your client. So whether your client listen to you or not, again, is whether they have confidence in you or whether they have trust with you, and then whether you're knowledgeable enough. Am I right? If your client have the confidence and trust in you, and if your advice is to ask the client to sell within the next 3 months to 6 months before price further slide down, then I can tell you, you may even get him to sell slightly below his break-even price, take a haircut loss today, and so that he doesn't suffer more losses. All right, okay. If transacted at a lower price, will it affect market price in the future? I don't really understand the question. I think if you are looking by on the much broader situation, of course, if generally average price transacted is lower, then would it affect market price in the future? Not entirely. All right, market price in the future will depend on a lot of things. Could be economic situation, could be, let's say, a property boom. All right, so whatever price transacted, all right, that is captured, that is only a basis, a point of reference, even the same as valuation. All right. How to make your property more attractive to sell? How to make the property more attractive to sell? A lot of things. You can do staging, you can paint it, you can you know, you can make it more competitive. Price has to be reasonable. Okay, a very general question. When can I start selling properties? Joel, you have been asking this question quite many times, all right? I mentioned to you, we will have a product briefing. You can start picking up the primary project to sell. Okay, you mentioned about sales with tenancy and tenant has a right to exercise their option to review. However, owner can increase the rental, which is unreasonable, and existing tenant will have no choice but to terminate. Now, this is very interesting. 1 minute of off track a bit. When tenancy agreement option to renew will be will depends on how the rental renewal is. Is it based on prevailing market rate? Is it based on mutually agreed upon, or is predetermined? There's a difference between prevailing market rate and mutually agreed upon. Prevailing market rental is actually a legal term in National Land Code. All right. So if there's a dispute on the rental, then both parties have to appoint an independent valuer to value. So once the independent valuer has valued, the owner will have to stick to that rental. So if it's mutually agreed upon, then yes, the landlord can be highly unreasonable. So so J Low, all right, okay, J Low, all right, okay. To answer your question is it depends. That's why I say whenever there is a tenancy agreement, whenever there's a case where you're selling together with a tenancy, you have to obtain a copy of the tenancy agreement to find out how, when is the option, what is the renewal terms and whatnot. All right. Okay. Is it legal for us to forfeit earnest deposit if loan cannot be obtained? Now, okay. Now, everyone, you have to remember, this is not about any policy. This is not about any company policy or not. This is about contract, all right? Offer to purchase form is actually a legal binding contract. Okay, so what is stated, all right? If let's say what is stated is you can forfeit the earnest deposit, that is nothing illegal about that, all right? Under contract law, it can be anything. All right. What if the contract is meant in such a way that not only you can forfeit, but then the buyer will have to work with the seller for the rest of his life. All right, as an employee, can that be done? Yes, of course. Sounds unreasonable, but in the contract, it's a contract. All right. Okay. Not sure how you handle this situation. Buyer agree on the price already after first viewing. By second viewing, buyer brings a father to knock down the price. How do you handle? Oh my God. Okay, it's the usual thing now. We are all Malaysian now. All right. Okay. So whenever you want to buy a property, then you share with your friends or your family. Then they say, why you go and buy that? Overpriced. Am I right? How to handle that? How to handle? Okay. How to even answer you that question? If you can talk to your client's father, I think that would be good, because I always believe negotiation, you got to negotiate directly with the person who actually bring the price down. Am I right? So so that is number one. Number two, then again, it will depend on the buyer, whether the trust, the confidence is there. All right. So there's actually many ways. But if you ask me, to me, it's very simple. If the offer price is unreasonable, okay, then you just simply say, no, it's not doable. If you think that the offer price is still reasonable, but it doesn't match up to your seller's expectation, then again, the three areas will work. Am I right? If your seller has already have the confidence and trust with you, and if commercially, all right, the lower price that is offered, the seller will still make a profit, but slightly less, you can still stand a chance to be able to convince the seller. All right, okay. For quote, where should you be earnest deposit, agent, lister? Okay, this one is a very common question. For quote agency, where do you put the earnest deposit? Now, again, this is again very contractual. All right, okay. If I'm the agent representing the seller and you bring the buyer from another agency, okay, this is what I always get. Then the earnest deposit, is it to be deposited with my company or with your company? Now, the fact that if let's say the seller appoint me as an agent, all right, okay, then whatever earnest deposit, the seller will also already authorize me to collect the earnest deposit. So whether your buyer trusts my company or not, trust me or not, can only trust you. That's why the money has to be with you. Contractual wise, it has to be with us because we represent the seller. So it really depends. These are all very contractual manner. Okay. How to answer by if they ask is the house haunted? How to okay, there's this thing called the duty of care, all right, to what extent? So I'm not sure whether haunting of house can be scientifically proven or not. But if you were to ask me, my simple question is, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not aware of, all right. And so that is as much as what it is, all right. Okay, haunted houses, all right. Okay, deposit to the lister, yes, correct. How to handle clients who want to sell their property but don't want to go through an agency, and why you think some sellers don't prefer to go through an agency company? Why? How to handle clients who want to sell? If clients who wants to sell their property and do not want to appoint an agency, I don't think they are in this world. Sorry, that is a joke. All right, we're in a world of real estate agency where that's how we make money. Why? How to handle? I believe this is something that you actually approach the seller, okay, owner to sell, where they have not appointed you. To me, is this. Then you got to bring what are the values you can bring on the table. Am I right? And why do you think some sellers prefer to go through an agency? Well, this is a very general question. Number one, they don't have the time. Number two, they believe that you can do a job for them. And number three, a lot of property owners who really invest in property, they will rather appoint an agent that who are very professional, who are able to give him the a good advice. Am I right? So agency work is not about trying to do matchmaking and get a buyer. Wow. Okay. How to negotiate owner to lower the price that the owner insists to sell high price and than the bank value? I just give you the 3 tips. Am I right? Then again, Desmond, it will depends on what is the motivation level of your seller. Okay, if your seller is eat bao and sell bao and eat bao, my bao, steak bao or whatever, then it will be tough. All right, because remember, willing buyer, willing seller. If the seller is not willing to let go at a certain price, it's because the seller say, "Hey, I can hold forever." All right, it's either you get me the price or you don't. Okay, sometimes you not all negotiation will work. Negotiation will also let you know and let you be able to determine where you stand with respect to this deal where the property is owned by this owner. All right, okay. So so there's actually a lot of consideration. It's not just about bargaining. That's why if you do, that's why you say, yeah, there's a difference between bargaining and negotiation. Bargaining is just about exchange of goods and the price. All right. Negotiation will encompass a lot more variables, as I shared earlier on. So one of the variable is whether how motivated the seller is. When can we get back to normal training session? When the pandemic is over. Ask seafood to cleanse. Okay. Another co-agents, how to handle listing handled by more than 2 agents in the different agency. Another on how to handle with listing that is handled by 2. Ruben Sun, I not very clear your question. Sorry, I have to skip that. Maybe you want to repost again. How to handle with the owner if owner insists to put their own banner on their property as well? How? Do you take out a knife or a cutter? No, you don't. There is a way, all right, okay, but it doesn't work most of the time. But like what I say, okay, how to handle, it will depends on the seller, all right, okay. But one of the things is you must be able to convince. So convincing power is highly important. Again, why would someone allow you to put a banner, or why would someone want to appoint you, or why would someone be convinced that you should be appointed? Again, it's the power of convincing. I'm not really answering your question because it's not just one strategy, it's a many strategies. All right. Okay. Two agency B, change owner, okay. Change owner, yeah, skip next if the seriously guys, okay, if we are dealing with a highly unreasonable owner, all right, or a client, you and me and everyone can just walk away, and there's always a next. All right. Don't be too despair about situation. All right. Okay. Is a bonus deadline extended? Joel, I don't know what you are asking. Okay, Ruben Soon, I still don't get what you are trying to ask. How to handle with the owner if owner insists? Okay. All right. Okay. Can we sign tenancy contract for 5 years with different rental increase of 100? For 5 years, you sign the 3+2. Every year your rental can change. Okay. Okay, so all right. So thank you very much, everyone. This session is about negotiation. All right. So I hope you all enjoyed the session. There's something that you take back. Remember, negotiation is a series of 3 parts of it. So I hope that you'll be able to use some of the tips I've given and help you in your negotiation and to close more deal. All right, so I'll pass the session back to Kai.
Okay. Okay, guys, that was a very good sharing by Aldrin. I hope you all can see most of our sessions leading up this week are all based on soft skills to make sure you all get a little bit more tips and tricks on how to talk, how to negotiate, and to make sure you can achieve your objective, which is basically closing down that deal. Okay, before we end our session, of course, we do highly appreciate if you can scan our feedback form. Give us more responses. Yesterday, we got not so many responses. Hopefully, all our fellow negotiators can help us improve our session. Your comments, your constructive comments and criticism is much appreciated. Please do scan, drop us a feedback. And as for tomorrow's session, it will be at the same time, 3 p.m. Tomorrow's session will be another soft skills sharing by a HR manager formerly at Malaysia Kini. His name is Kishan Mono. He will be giving you tips and tricks of cold calling. Of course, speech as well is something that is developed. We learn how to talk, we learn languages, and we continuously improve our speech as well. Okay, so make sure you guys stay tuned tomorrow for 3 p.m. For those of you that have not scanned, please stay back and scan, give us some feedback. And most importantly, let's all give a warm round of applause for our speaker today, Aldrin Tan. Thank you very much for this session.